Yes, good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Speaking for Calix and our partners, Ready.net and HR Green, we're very excited that you're joining today. We have a very important topic to talk about. The BEAD application phase is approaching. What I'd like to do first is introduce our speakers. First, we have on the next slide, we have Kat. She's with Ready.net, and she's a dedicated broadband funding advocate, committed to bridging the digital divide to unserved communities. She specializes on assisting rural ISPs in securing funding for broadband infrastructure. Next, we have Ed Barrett. He is the president of HR Green, which is a very large 650 professional engineering firm where 65 of that staff is dedicated specifically to broadband projects. He works with local, regional, and state levels of government and has extensive fiber to the home experience with both design and grant applications. And finally, we have Kevin Sievert. Kevin Sievert is with Calix. He is the senior broadband strategy manager, focusing on preparing for funding programs such as BEAD. And prior to Calix, he spent time working with the state broadband office and has very deep knowledge of the NTIA programs. So I'm very excited to have the team here. Before we get much into that, I'd like to have just a quick poll question. And again, thank you for joining. These poll questions are very important because it gives us as speakers a sense of what your current feelings are on the BEAD program. The first question is specific to the BEAD program itself. At this time, do you plan to apply? Are you still on the fence thinking about it and still have some concerns? Or do you not plan to apply at all? So we'll give the audience about 30 seconds to put in their answers and we'll read them out. All righty. Brittany, if you could help with the response there, I didn't see it as it was coming up. Okay, there we go. This is fantastic. So 2/3 of those do plan on applying, and we still have a small percentage, about 30% are still on the fence. So hopefully as we go through the different material, we'll move you closer to the apply side of things. Just that I'd like to just share the state of the union of the BEAD program and where we are today. As you know, we have we're in the wake of the pandemic, and there's been a generational investment in internet access. And we are a window to update broadband nationwide to make sure that the internet is available, affordable, fast, and secure. And that's really the purpose of the $42.5 billion BEAD program. But it's different. What really makes BEAD different than any other programs in the past is that the NTIA and the states are going for universal service. And how's that different? Universal service means that every single unserved and underserved location throughout the country will be served at the end of the BEAD program. That is quite an undertaking. Most of the programs in the past, as we look at this slide, really looked at, made it optional. Typically, the applications went after what I call the low-hanging fruit, but there were always certain areas that were completely ignored by the applicants for the funding programs. So for the states and the BSPs move forward on this goal of universal service, there's going to be a lot of collaboration between the ISPs and the state offices directly. And that's what we're going to talk about quite a bit as we go through the different areas and the different phases moving forward. Just to give you a state of the union on the next slide, no matter what state or territory you're serving, every single state has a program. Since the beginning of the program a couple years ago, we are now at the point where all 50 states or territories have both submitted their Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 provides the list of locations or how they're going to move forward to get the list of locations that will be available for the grant applications. And Volume 2 is focused on the application process specifically, looking at the rubric, looking at what's most important to the state. These initial proposals do have the guidance of the NTIA, and the NTIA will approve these, but the NTIA sets guardrails for the states so they can make sure that they're building the most specific program needed for their state of Nebraska or the state of Arizona. So where are we today? NTIA has approved all 56 Volume 1s and 8 Volume 2s. But the states have been waiting for these approvals. The states have moved forward. 36 states, and we're going to get in more detail, have started their map challenge process, and many of them have actually finished them. As far as the pre-application period, right now, last counted, and it's changing every day, we have 6 states who have already started that pre-application period. And that is critically important if you're interested, because that's used as a way of qualifying the BSPs of whether or not they're both financially as well as experienced to move forward with the full application. So make sure that you're part of that. I'm going to have a quick poll question. I'm going to hand off to Kevin to talk a little bit about how we're going to help prepare you. So the next poll question is exactly what I talked about, this map challenge process. As I mentioned, over 30 states have moved forward with the map challenge. Some have finished, some haven't started yet. And my question is general. So for those who in the states where it's already moved forward, were you involved? Yes or no?
Why don't we go ahead and keep moving forward? So it looked like the poll question 2 had a very similar response. The majority said that they did participate or plan to participate. A couple aren't sure, and there were a couple of no's. I would say for the ones that aren't sure, if your state still has their challenge process ahead of them, I would say you need to participate in it at a bare minimum in a defensive mode, just to make sure that the state is representing your areas appropriately. So we'll move on to the next slide as Greg is joining. Essentially what I'd like to do is just briefly describe, Greg had talked about some of these phases that are in the BEAD program, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about each one of the phases and what the BSP should expect during each one of those phases. So the first phase, the map challenge phase, and this is really where the states have an opportunity to finalize the map and identify the locations that are going to be eligible for BEAD funding. The next phase, and I will say this is a little bit tricky because we have 56 different entities that are implementing this program. And it seems like, there are some similarities between some of them, but they also have their own, their own flavor. So this is a very high level generic discussion. Some states have an official pre-application phase, and that pre-application phase varies in definition. For example, some are just using it as a very basic pre-qualification to say you can apply for the BEAD funding. The other one is using the pre-application phase as a way to help generate and determine proposed serving areas. So the pre-application phase is can be a very broad term, but essentially it's the time prior to the application phase that ISPs in the state are going to be using to prepare for the application phase. The application phase, what I would consider this is when the state actually opens its application portal and BSPs can submit applications officially to the state. After that, the state will go into a reconciliation phase. This reconciliation phase is where the state has the opportunity to negotiate with the BSPs to identify the final proposed serving areas and also address any orphaned locations that didn't receive any bids. And so the states again will have various application or various implementations of the application reconciliation. Some of them are doing it in multiple rounds. Some states are doing it as a one-time application and then a long reconciliation back and forth process with the BSPs. After that reconciliation process is done and submitted to the NTIA for approval, then the NTIA will approve the results of the application. The awards will be announced. And of course, that is when the BSPs can start their implementation. During the implementation, the next and final phase is the post-award, where really the BSPs are going to be not only concerned about building out their networks, but also reporting and compliance of the BEAD funding. So with that, Calix is the thing that's impressed me about Calix. I've been with Calix for about 6 months. Is that we've developed a lot of partners to help our customers walk through this funding journey, right? And so we have some internal resources that will help our customers educate and prepare for the BEAD funding. We also have a partnership with Ready.net and folks like HR Green, who are consultant engineering firms that help us help us take our customers through these processes so that we can give them the best opportunity for success. And so with that, I'll hand over the presentation to Kat, and she is going to take us through the Ready.net tool. Thanks, Kat.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Let me just pull up my page here. There you go. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Kevin. So as Kevin mentioned, we partner with Calix to really help operators that are going through this funding journey. So the old grant system has really been broken. Many feel like grants were really weighted towards incumbents, really the larger incumbents, being how complex they were to go after and to stay compliant. So broadband money was created specifically as a way for local providers, or for us to help the local providers to help the urban overlooked or rural underserved areas who are systematically underrepresented and unaccounted for in the fabric. So what we took a data-driven approach to really bring clarity to the grant process and brought really all the tools needed for every step in that applicant journey into this single platform. So providers are going to be really guided through the grant journey to make sure that they're going to adhere to all of the requirements that are set forth by the state broadband offices and the NTIA. Now, turn my volume here. So as Greg and Kevin mentioned, we are in the challenge process. The challenge process is very well underway. And really there's this huge importance of being involved in the challenge process. So again, the areas that you know are going to be eligible, that you are involved with making sure that these project areas become eligible within the states, but also if you get challenged or contested, that you are going to be aware of what happens through that challenge process. So these are the 4 states that are open right now with their challenge process. As you can see, the dates are closing up soon. And then just a quick overview of the 30 states that have closed their challenge process this first round. So as I mentioned, Ready specifically built tools to make sure that operators are prepared and well equipped to apply and win the BEAD funding. And BEAD really is the largest funding opportunity we've ever seen, and it potentially is the last to make a real change within connectivity. So the Broadband Money platform was created for smaller, non-traditional and local providers to, again, help those urban overlooked and rural underserved areas. So by taking this data-driven approach to bring clarity to the grant process, we brought all the tools you need into this single form. So with hundreds of different data layers and reliable sources pulled into this one platform, you're really quickly able to identify exactly where are all these BEAD opportunities. With my little animation here, hopefully you can see it. It's moving a little slow on my screen, but we really have about over 250 data layers. So you can really slice and dice the data to get the perfect view that makes sense for you. So helping identify and prioritize based off of service technologies. So what's available at each broadband serviceable location, speed test data to tell us the ground truth, census level data to help identify where the low income areas, where the minority communities, where the median household incomes within these areas. So really being able to get really granular and help with your scoring of your application. And again, just giving you that clarity and focus on where your initiatives should be and what you should be pulling into those BEAD applications. So once you really get in and start using all of those data layers and data sources to slice and dice the information to pull together the really best scoring and most eligible areas for BEAD, you're able to now pull in all that information to this single pane of glass. So you're going to get what I like to call my project portfolio. So all of these different projects really classed and graded so that you know what's going to be the best opportunities for you to expand in. And now you're able to run those high-level feasibility studies, high-level financial analysis within just a matter of hours, even minutes in some cases. And then you can start editing that entire project portfolio from a single view. We've also taken a different approach to mapping anchor institutions. Anchor institutions, multi-dwelling units have been historically and continuously overlooked. So by pulling in additional data sources on top of just what you're going to get through the BDC or Fabric, we're now able to identify, again, where are the anchor institutions, commercial building, multi-dwelling units, really to pull together one of the most enhanced geospatial address level databases available in broadband. We also put together a high-level design module where, again, in a matter of minutes, using AI, you can now have your high-level design created based off of the projects that you are building out for your BEAD application. So here's a quick clip. You can see just by adding either a single tower or you can help design it, adding different towers and fiber lines within that, but really allowing AI to help us make decisions around what is the fastest route to build. And with this, you're also going to get your high-level design, your estimates on miles of fiber needed, total cost to build, cost per passing, and drop needed. So another really cool thing that we put together and that we felt was really necessary within the grant process was making it easier to actually apply for the application. So we took almost this kind of TurboTax style module and broke down what was been written into the NOFO so far and really holding your hand through what is going to be asked and what will be required. So right now, when you go through our application module, it's about 80% of what's been written into the NOFO so far. The nuances that are going to come from each of the states and US territories will start to look a little different. But we want to make sure that you are at the right starting point, that you are starting to collect the correct information that is going to be asked of the NOFO. So I definitely urge everyone to get started and start preparing. Now, we have Ed with HR Green on this call as well. I'd like to toss it over to Ed now. And he'll be able to tell you a lot more about network engineering design and the grant process as well.
Yeah. Kat, just a moment. Kat, you were gonna share the slide deck, correct?
I will go ahead and pull up the next slide deck again.
And as Kat's doing that, HR Green has been really sort of blessed to be part of the partnership discussion here. It's really three firms who all offer, kind of best in class within swim lane and responsibilities. So as you think about, process that Kevin went through, what really makes the partnership so attractive is the complementary strength of the partners. It kind of closes, HR Green kind of closes the gap between the very effective high level planning post grant compliance services offered by ready.net and, the fantastic network equipment and services offered in the build process by Calix. So, I don't want to bore everyone with the basics of, applying for a grant, but do want to just highlight, across what we've seen at the federal level, and there will always be, as has been mentioned, kind of customizations at the state level as each NOFO comes out. But, many of you have grant writers in-house. It can be completed by existing resources, or you can hire a CE firm, a consulting firm like HR Green to help you complete the application. I do want to point out these, as Kat had mentioned, these can be a pretty time consuming process. Just the written portion of the application, can be a, 40, 80, 100-hour process. And, and that's the sort of pulling in all of the information, not even including the technical components. So, as we look at the technical side, Broadband Money again is an excellent planning tool. It allows you to really make very effective go no go decisions. But once you're ready to apply, you really have to get detailed on the technical components of the project. At a very high level, you'll have to get a design complete that enables you to really clearly identify, what's your planned OSP design, really at a BOM level kind of detail. You get one shot to go for costing, the grant amounts that you're going to be asking for certainly have a weighting in the decision and the award process. So really understanding your full cost becomes critically important. You need to have a very good understanding of the capacity of your team and your partners around your plan, build, and turn up schedule, and have a very well thought out risk QA plan and an environmental plan for how you're going to deal with the various minor but very important details that are outlined by the BEAD program. You have NEPA, you may have tribal or other environmental issues to deal with. There are details around labor force and labor force training. So ensuring that you have all of those bases covered. The reviewers at the state offices, as they begin to adjudicate these awards, are certainly going to be looking to evaluate, number one, at a baseline, the completeness of your application, but number two, looking for competitive differentiation as they go through what will likely be a competitive grant process. So, I'd like to share a little bit of work that we've done as some examples. This project shows detailed high-level design for a very large project that was being considered by one of our clients. This was a kind of state regional project, about a $400 million overall project that contained both BEAD eligible and what they were calling kind of core build areas. So they were looking to make a pretty big splash in a portion of a state. So this design really did a couple of things. And if you can proceed to the next page, it really allowed them to get to a very detailed kind of bill of materials level cost. That becomes very important. You want to not only understand your projected cost at a, equipment and material level up, but, BEAD does allow you to include some of your, your cost of implementation. There are internal labor costs that can be included. So as you think about those details and getting to that, that detailed level, it becomes very important that you have not just, sort of a cost per mile of fiber level of detail, but actually a detailed and realistic look at contract costs and construction costs. The other technical consideration that I'll point out is simply that, there are requirements that you have, and these may or may not change. We're always hesitant when you have a national level edict that each state will then perfect in their NOFO. But as written, you do need to have a professional engineer certify. They have to certify that your designs can meet the speeds that are being promised at all locations, that costs are realistic, and that your timeline is achievable. We are finding in the market that, as this money comes to bear, it is very likely, and we and our other firms like HR Green really are starting to sort of approach capacity. So if you are planning to go after money, be thinking about identifying your partner early as you can, because many of the design firms out there do not have professional engineers on staff. So do make sure that you've got your own partnerships in place so that you're ready and you don't sort of get tripped up by the PE certification hurdle. So next slide, from a technical certification perspective, I might need you to go one more slide if you can. Maybe back just one click. So one too many. Perfect. Thank you. So one thing that you should be thinking of, particularly as most of the ISPs that we've dealt with are planning to, in some cases, you probably are going to have 100% grant funded builds. In a lot of cases, you're going to take a more project approach. You're not going to bypass served houses if you have to run access fiber out. So be thinking about how you want to break out those costs between eligible and non-eligible costs. That will become very important as you go to funding. And it's important that you understand those costs thoroughly, because in some cases, the cost of your access fiber, your middle mile fiber, can be included in your overall application costs. The fiber that gets you to the last mile can be included as part of your build. So just a quick tip and a quick reminder on that. So as you think about not just how you want to check the box, but also, how to make sure that your grant, when it hits the state offices and is being evaluated, a couple of things that we would just encourage. Number one, they are going to be looking at project team experience. In most cases, people tend to think of that as what is the internal ISP experience. We believe that those grant applicants who have also identified, who are our engineering firms, who are our construction partners, who are our supplier partners, having those level of details probably are going to earn you a couple of bonus points in the evaluation criteria. And we really encourage you, focus on how you're sort of fixing community problems. In the end, there are DEA programs that are very important to the state offices. So how are you fixing digital equity? Have you had outreach inside of the community? Letters of support are great. We would certainly encourage you to ask for them from local government, but don't forget about the schools. Don't forget about the medical systems. Do not forget about the other anchor institutions, libraries, others that are in your potential build areas. And lastly, writing an effective grant is really about telling a story. And one thing that we've seen in past programs is that people who can tell a story about how we're going to change lives in this service area versus how are we going to provide speeds really have a leg up when it comes time to evaluate. So, don't just focus on the how and the what and the materials and the cost, but tell the story of how you're going to improve the community. How are you going to affect, distance learning? How are you going to make it easier for kids to log in during medically adverse conditions like the pandemic? How are you going to solve the remote, the lack of jobs in many of these rural communities? So focus on those things, focus on those outcomes, and make sure that you're not forgetting to tell the story of why we're all doing this and why it's so important and how that's going to affect the world that you're looking to provide to.
Thanks, Kat. I've had the opportunity to demo the tool from ready.net and to quite a few customers, and the responses have been very positive. And thank you, Ed, for describing how BSPs can engage with consulting engineering firms to help them develop their applications and how to get them over the goal line. So with this, you might be asking yourself, so what's next, right? I would say for BSPs that are located in states that have not started their challenge process, be engaged, get engaged, right? There's still a lot of questions out there, and I think just the best way to navigate this is to get as much information as you can and be involved. The second, for the rest of the states, that have completed their challenge process, the real goal now is, how do I ensure I get a seat at the table for the BEAD funding? And one of the state's biggest challenges is going to be managing the process of addressing all of the broadband serviceable locations in their state. And of course, each state will have to juggle the various issues and drivers specific for their state. So Ed will take us through a slide that will tee up some of these key issues and discuss that. Ed?
Yeah, thank you. You sort of led me right into the biggest challenge that the state offices are going to have. There is a lot of money coming. BSPs are going to be applying for certain areas, and really fundamentally, the thing that keeps the state broadband directors up is how do we make sure that we have 100% service? How do we do that without leaving kind of holes in the Swiss cheese of the fabric? They're each taking very different approaches. Some are choosing, Kevin, as you mentioned, this pre-application process where people are coming forward and saying, "Hey, we're interested in these areas." They're going to do that on a pre basis. Others are going to do that during the adjudication process. I think you're going to see some states go to multiple award rounds. So, let's put some money out there. Let's see what's left. Let's put another round out there. And that is literally, as we've had conversations with state broadband offices, the single biggest challenge. So as they're trying to establish their very high cost locations, how do I do that in a way where we maximize the dollar, but also bring, fiber is a preferred under the program service technology. How do we get fiber as deep as we can while still allowing having enough money to serve all of the locations without leaving holes? Because holes that are left in this program are likely not going to be served. These are already remote areas. So, I want to encourage everyone, be thinking about that as you're going into the application process. Are you ready to be nimble? Can you redesign quickly by adding or subtracting BSLs, broadband locations? Are you able to, add 20 over here and recalculate your costs? Do you have financial models set up that allow you to, to look at the ROIs? It's not unlikely that as locations are being added, that many of them are maybe the least attractive from an ROI basis. So how do you take, what might be a very, very attractive post-funding cost per passing area, build in some additional cost or some higher cost areas, recalculate that. That nimbleness and that process of sort of reconciliation and adjudication will likely move pretty quickly. So as you're setting up your backends, please do consider that. I think that's going to be an important aspect for the BSPs out there.
All right. That's great, Ed. Thanks. And so what I'd have to just kind of echo what Ed was saying. The application reconciliation process is going to be a heavy lift for the state, but in reality, they're going to be relying on all of the applicants to be able to quickly assess and respond to the request during that reconciliation process, and that is going to require the modification of your proposed serving areas, network designs, budgets. And so once all of this horse trading is done at the state reconciliation process and the plan is approved, then the fun begins, right? We actually get to start building network. And so with that, of course, with every grant, there comes requirements with regards to reporting and compliance. So Kat will discuss briefly what Radio.net is setting up to do in that area. Kat?
Still muted. Let me try to get through some of those animations we were talking about earlier. Yeah. So one of the biggest hurdles that I would say operators that I hear the most are weary of, and maybe even a little afraid of going after funding, is their ongoing reporting and compliance. So we know that once BEAD has been awarded, there's about 10 years of that ongoing reporting that will be required monthly, semi-annually, and quarterly to the federal government, particularly to NTIA and NIST. So reporting is a considerable lift for really any entity that receives federal funding, and it's crucial that you really start planning for that ongoing reporting and compliance pretty quickly. So from the initial award to the final disbursement, Ready has built the tools that we can use to really automate what's ongoing with the state and what the NTI reporting and testing requirements are going to be. And all of this is going to tie back to the geospatial workflows that I showed you earlier. So we work with a lot of the state broadband offices directly. About 28 of them, I believe, is the last number I heard. Probably more to come. But with working with the state broadband offices, we have really a comprehensive understanding of what the reporting and compliance is going to entail. So what previously has been this large barrier for operators has now become an automated workflow that is going to significantly reduce the amount of time you spend with these manual inputs, and it even reduces the room for some of that human error that could happen. So again, we took the approach to really simplify reporting for operators. So you'll be able to track your project management, your financial and grants management, manage your reimbursements, and really upload your documentation all through that Ready platform, what we're calling Ready ARC standing for Automated Reporting and Compliance. So looking again at the life cycle of the grant, you'll be able to track the amount of funding, the amount allocated, the matching funds, all from the design and planning milestones or other milestones as you move forward. So whether it's vendor selection materials, network routes, budget, affordability, you're still able to track all of those individual line items. That'll be particularly required from the SF 424C form. So every state, the deliverables are going to be a little different. So for example, one of the states, they may reimburse based off of milestones, another state based off of percentage complete. So let's say 10% of the total project is complete and your recommended reimbursements, it can be even social location based. If you connect it, let's say 10,000 DSS, you're reimbursed. Basically all of that just to let you know that every state's going to look a little different, and we're going to make sure that you're staying compliant within your state, what their regulations are going to look like. So these are some of the states that we are working with. We have helped many of them through their CPC process, so the challenge process. For some of them, you might see the state maps looking similar to what you saw today. We do operate a handful of the state maps as well, and are guiding them through that grant application process. All right. So I believe from here we have a third poll question.
Yes, very good. And I am back. And hey, this is the reason why we have the BEAD program is that for those who can't stay connected. So hey, I'm back and I'm excited. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Ed, Kevin, Kat. So as you can imagine, BEAD is one program, but BEAD is actually 56 programs. And we spend every day looking at all the different 56 states as well as territories. And we want to make sure that we provide you as much connectivity as we can to that information. And we are just an email away. If you're interested, we could share some of that information automatically just based on this webinar. So click yes if you're interested in doing that, or just reach out to us. So, hey, a quick note to Jim at Forkadeer. If I can move down to Tennessee, I would. He made a comment, says, I need some fiber internet, and that's absolutely true. No more coax. Sorry, anybody's using coax. So, that is the poll questions. And you know what? The great news is that we have about 13 minutes for Q&A. So I am going to just shift gears to Q&A. If we can go two more slides forward and just jump right into it. So, hey, a couple questions have come in, and as I'm going through them, if y'all could just share some of your questions, and we can get to the audience questions in a second. So, one of the questions that came in, and it's really more to you, Kat. With the broadband money, it seemed to be a lot of data that you use to build those maps and kind of build that single pane of glass. I was just wondering if you can go through that for us and share a little bit about what you use.
Yeah, absolutely. So we pull in several different sources of data, right? So we build everything based off of what is being reported by the operators to the FCC. So a lot of it's going to be built off of the Fabric BDC information, but there's a lot of under and over reporting that's been done historically. So we pull in additional sources to really get more of a ground truth and get a real understanding of what is that ground truth, what's happening. So by pulling in speed test data from MLab and Ookla, we have an enhanced address level database. So having integrations with the U.S. Postal Service, for example. So we also get a clear idea of where all the parcel deliverable addresses are. Can pull in all those MVUs, commercial buildings, anchor institutions. And then we pull in a lot of private proprietary data sources, as well as a lot of web scraping to get really clear competitive analysis and data as well.
Thanks, Kat. I'm looking for questions. I just have another one, and if anybody's interested, get some questions out there, please do. The next one is how Kevin or Ed, just jump in. How would you assess the industry's interest in BEAD? And is there any guidance you can provide to these customers or the audience on the webinar today?
Kevin's on mute, so I'll take my first swing, but I'd love to hear Kevin's thoughts as well. I think, Greg, it is at a very macro level. I think it's very unlikely that you see this program being undersubscribed. I know that there are an awful lot of strings attached to reporting requirements that are causing, ISPs to maybe think carefully. I think you saw that reflected in the poll results, where a third were like, we're still thinking through it. But the state of Colorado, I think this was fairly consistent across most states. CPF rounds already happened. In Colorado, they were oversubscribed 260 some percent. I don't think you'll see that level of oversubscription, but I don't think you're going to see an awful lot of money go unused in this process, which speaks to the interest of the provider community.
Excellent. Want to pile on, Kevin? Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say, I think it's going to be state specific, and I hate saying that again, but the state I came from in our ARPA, we were not oversubscribed on our ARPA requests. So we actually had to turn money back to the state for them to use for, some other capital projects. So I think I see a couple of main factors right now. I see that there's a lot of misunderstanding, misinterpretation, some confusion, a lot of fear of the unknown. And, I will say, having been, specifically focused on BEAD for the last 2 years at a state broadband office, NTIA is kind of building the plane in the air. And so you just have to kind of get over that initial hump of not knowing all of the dotted I's and crossed T's, and just, realize that the NTIA wants to give this money out. The states want to give this money out. They want to use it for broadband projects, and they're really looking for input and guidance. And so I would say stay engaged, make sure you do everything you can to have a seat at the table when the states start talking about, the application areas, and start that negotiation process. And then if there are any hurdles that are, that are inherent to you specifically, and I'll use the example of a very small ISP that might only have a couple of hundred locations. Reach out to the state, let them know what is specific to you. I know it's not very cost efficient for you guys to create an application to submit in a formal application process. Reach out to the state, see if there's anything that they can do, any recommendations that they can help. We have partners that have different, philosophies on how they would help folks write grants. There could be reviews, there could be other things. So reach out to us as well and talk about those issues. And, we'll bring the full force of Calix and all of our partners to address your problem.
Thanks, Kevin. So Robin, Miss Levy, I didn't want to make sure we missed your question. You had your hand raised. If you want to come off mute and just go ahead and share it. Might have missed that opportunity. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. So just moving right along, had another question concerning back to the broadband money tool. Just give a sense of when you look at the tool today versus what the state has as locations. Can you share? You touched on a little bit about talking about different types of data. Can you share any ways that you can leverage that information versus where the states are, and then share what the roadmap is?
Absolutely. So right now, the broadband money platform is pretty uniform across the states with the amount of data and the information that we pulled in. So with the individual state data that's coming through the challenge process, that is going to start looking a little different. So as the challenge processes are being completed and they're going to be approved by the NTIA, and those eligible entities, they become identified, right? We know they're going to lay out exactly, some states are going to do it by census block, some will do it by school district, and some are going to keep it at the BSL level. It's all going to look a little different. Now, as soon as that becomes public information, we'll start pulling that information into the broadband money tool as well. So we can start overlaying and seeing the difference between, well, what's happening with Fabric, what's happening with our additional sources of data, and what's happening with the states. So really start being a comparative tool as well. So it's going to look a little different here as those challenges get completed. But that state data is important and something we need to be aware of and keeping an eye on as well.
Thank you. I believe we have Robin now coming back.
Yeah, I wasn't able to unmute before. I was muted by the organizer, and I can't use the chat, so I was kind of stuck. There's no chat. There's no way to put any information in the chat. So, my question was for you, Kat, as well. Have you integrated with any construction progress platforms where you can get the reporting direct?
No, not yet. It is definitely on the pipeline to create those tech stack integrations, but that is still something that's underway.
Okay.
Robin, related to tying, I'm assuming you're talking about fiber management to like a render or a Vitruvi type of application?
Yes, any of the above, AGOL.
Yeah, my suspicion is that the states will also probably have individual portals. Ready.net, I think will be probably a front end on a number of those. So I think maintaining that integration and having your information at least reportable on a geospatial basis puts you in a really nice ahead of the pack status, because I think most states really are headed towards geospatial data use in their compliance and reporting. So I think the fact that you already have an internal integration on that and that ability to report it should be an advantage for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robin, for the question. Oh, go ahead. Any follow-up?
No, just yes.
That's good. So we have about 3 minutes left. So Ed, quick question for you. So how do you or does your company actually help with the entire BEAD process, writing through the application? Where does it start and end?
Greg, we are pretty full service, as I mentioned. I think you mentioned in the introduction. We do work on the government side at the state level and regional and local level, helping with government planning, and we have a pretty robust, private sector practice. So, we kind of ride the middle ground between the two, talk both sets of languages. So that really allows us to, be effective in both grant preparation and grant writing. Many of our partners have an in-house grant team, the larger ones, but then leverage HR Green to, do high-level design, costing, bill of materials type of work. So we can fit for smaller companies that really need kind of a one-stop shop. We're pretty effective there, but we can also plug in for some of engineering design, PE certification type of work. So
Excellent, Ed. And so I'm just going to take a minute. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I'll just take a minute and thank you from a Calix perspective. Thank you, Kat, Ready.net. Thank you, Ed, and HR Green. And everybody, I know everybody's busy. I know this is going to be an extremely busy year, but we're all here in it together. We will crack this one and get us down the road, and we're going to be part of this generational change. So I'm so excited. So thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much.
thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.